Welcome back to Voice of a Teen Mom. This is our second episode of 2024. Yes, I still have to talk about 2024 because 2023 went by so quickly. But I do hope that this year is bringing a lot of joy, peace. You guys are enjoying the year thus far and it's been a good year. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's episode. And what we will be speaking on today is this popular phrase, prevention is better than cure. So as a young girl, this prevention is better than cure is something that would be preached in a lot of settings for many different reasons. And so in the case of a young girl growing up, I know that some parents would definitely preach this saying in terms of abstinence, in terms of waiting for sex and things like that. While, from what I know, in many Jamaican households, even if there was a talk, there wasn't really one that was a sit-down talk or something like that. Most of the times, it's just your parents mouthing you, saying, "What sweetie, I go so are you?" Things like that. So in our culture, there is a lack of real conversation within the homes itself about sex and abstaining from sex and pretty much the whole works about sex. As a matter of fact, the topic of sex really doesn't come up with any conversation at all, especially any conversations with children that is forbidden. While some families and some households do it, I can say that majority of Jamaican households, there isn't that talk, especially back in the day. There might be more talks about it now, but back in the day, man, your mother ain't sitting you down and talking about no sex. I do believe that a lot of work is needed in terms of the prevention aspect of teenage pregnancy. To be honest, there's so much you can do and no more in terms of putting things in place, trying to educate teenagers about sex, trying to educate the family setting in a sense, in terms of how do you have this conversation with your child, your teenage girl. And it's a case too where a lot of the population in itself needs to be educated, and that is a whole topic in and of itself. But there are things being put in place in terms of educating the young girls about sex, especially in the schools, and I can appreciate that. But from a level where I have first-hand experience of teenage pregnancy, I think most of the programs or most of the emphasis needs to be placed on the home. I believe that the home is a core part of the problem of teenage pregnancy, and even though you might be teaching it within the schools, at home is where that teenage girl spends the rest of her time at. And so, yes, focus it within schools in terms of teaching them about sex, but there also needs to be a case where parents and all the relatives, the older persons, the adults in the home, need to learn on how to also form that part where they too can help to educate these teenagers about sex. And it's funny that us adults don't want to talk about it, and so we leave that void, we leave that space between the sex and the child in terms of growing up. They are going to grow up, they are going to have different experiences outside of the home, and as I said, their experiences, the outer influences that they have will play a role. So you have to try and garner and instill certain values and have certain conversations with them from within the home. Another big part of the puzzle that is missing is not talking to our boys. Now, of course, it takes two to get the outcome of a teenage pregnancy. And so the boys definitely need to be involved in being educated about sex, as well as talking to them about maturing, going through their adolescent years. I mean, I hate it that the boys, most of the times within the home, within the society itself, they are being praised when they reach that stage where they want to engage in sexual activities. They're more given the go ahead to do it. And I mean, it shouldn't be that way, but hey, this is what it is. And so we have to tackle that aspect as well, because it's not only the girls. Teenage pregnancy happens because, of course, there's a female and there's a male. So we have to speak to the boys about maturing and about sex on a whole, and still preach abstinence. And I can't say it enough that all of these conversations do start from the home. And I know that parents find it difficult to have these conversations with children, as they would say, but we need to remember that they will grow up into adults, and part of the job is to help them, guide them, prepare them for when they do grow up, because they definitely will. And so it needs to start from the home and then gradually start within the schools. I know that within the schools as well, they are having Girls' Day, they are having Boys' Day, and this needs to be a part of the conversation. I mean, based on the age, of course, you will take your time to filter the information, and so of course you're going to tell them in a sense of age appropriateness, but as they grow, the tailoring of the information should improve in terms of them getting the reality of things as they get older. Sometimes the parents themselves can't even be blamed, because yes, some are reckless, yes, some are neglectful to their children. However, at the end of the day, despite all of that, no one actually got a blueprint on how to raise children. Most of us are actually raising our children based on our experiences, based on what our parents did, based on other outside influences. I mean, no one knows an actual book of how to raise a child. And so it's really why I say at the end of the day, the emphasis should be on the home, but as well the school plays a role, the society in itself does play a role, and it's an effort from everyone basically. And so yes, the core of it needs to be from the home, but it's definitely a shared effort. Overall, trying to prevent anything from happening, then someone has to know the root cause of the problem. And once you can get the root cause and work on that, then obviously the problem will decrease. And in the case of teenage pregnancy, there's so many different elements, causes of it, that it's one of the reasons why there is a problem, and there is this tendency of it not going away. And of course, it won't totally eradicate. It's been happening from years before, but in terms of allowing it to keep going on and growing in number is where the problem is. And so part of it is getting to the different root causes of why are these teenage girls becoming pregnant. And yes, there will be the persons saying that, look, this teenager, them have sense, them know what them do, they were as much involved as with everyone. But as I would say to anyone saying that you're talking about children. So yes, they might have some sense of what they're doing in terms of right and wrong, and yes, they might have enough sense, as we call it, to know that okay, this should not happen. You should listen to what your parents say. That's if your parent had the talk, and so forth. But again, you are dealing with children, so anything can happen, anything can play, and that's just my take. A lot of people have their view on as to why this young girl gonna have sex, as they would say, but that's not the topic of this episode. That is for another episode. If I go into that, then it won't end. But yes, the root cause of it is a lot. There are plenty of reasons as to why it happened. And don't get me wrong, this is just my take on the whole preventing teenage pregnancy situation. And so it's something that you as a parent, you as a guardian need to think about. And I can't tell anyone how to raise their children, but it's just a thought. So guys, feel free to give your take on strategies or ways that you think that we can prevent teenage pregnancy, and feel free to also share your comments on what do you think about my point of view, because this is just my point of view. I know that many of you have your opinions on the topic, and feel free to share them. Thank you guys for tuning in, and see you in the next video.